Starbase 1 features prominently in Star Trek Strange New Worlds and briefly in Discovery as the main base for Starfleet in an era before the Earth space dock was completed. Starbase 1 by the 2250s was already considered to be one of the Federation's oldest outposts, and something of an idealised location. Built in a similar style to future Starfleet bases, only with the spires and towers jutting upwards rather than down as future designs would favour. It was also less domed and rounded than later stations, with hard angles giving it a more rudimentary look. Starbase 1's story begins in an era of World War III. Prior to 2053, the end of the war, the science teams had created orbital platforms that contained biomes and forested areas in an effort to continue experimentation into potential colonisation and creating sustainable living conditions. These pods included seed vaults for preservation, as well as a forest around a lake, an Arctic climate of evergreens and mountains, and a dry, rocky area with sparse vegetation. These experiments, however, would go untended during the hectic times of global conflict, and by the time nations were ready to reclaim them, the pods were now too overgrown or otherwise ill-suited to return. As mankind moved into its first warp era, these pods were collected together and construction began around them, unifying them into the first Starfleet orbital starbase. A 3,074 metre disk was formed to collect them, and the rotational gravity swapped out for artificial gravity systems. This ring would go on to be used as the docking ring. Below this ring would be the array of antennae, sensors and other communications equipment alongside the main reactor, while the above section would develop into towers to hold offices, workspaces, quarters, and so on. These workspaces included research and development labs of numerous science or engineering divisions and topics. There were also facilities on board for Starfleet Academy training. The structure for Starbase 1 would go on to be used in several other early designs, but eventually be replaced by larger or more practical layouts. These were created from the start for long-term inhabitation, and as such had many amenities and even facilities for civilian life aboard. However, it was definitely more of a work station than the later space dock was, as that would go on to feature entire internal sectors for non-Starfleet life aboard. As such, part of SB-1's operation included an artificial day-night cycle, kept in time with Earth's 24 hours. The starbase held a crew of 80,000 and had several functions and was defined as the Strongpoint class station. We saw them in use as both hubs of Starfleet's affairs such as Starbase 1 and research outposts like Deep Space Taurus 4. It acted as a hub of offices for Starfleet Command where several high-ranking admirals dwelt, making use of the communications networks and numerous subspace comms there. Likewise, numerous small shuttles and transports were often passing to and from the station, but mostly only those directly in Starfleet. There were not many Earth cargo service ships unloading at Starbase 1, for example, unless their shipments were directly for the station. Another function was to act as a berth for starships to undergo repair, refit, and inspection. While Starfleet shipyards were more capable of constructing vessels and tackling large structural refits, Starbase 1 held many inspection teams that could undertake the lighter tasks that didn't require disassembling the superstructure, although this could be done there too should the need arise. Finally, the domes around it were considered protected parks thanks to their historical status, and therefore were preserved and appreciated shore-leave locations. Their most common visitors were crews from docked vessels that were grounded or between assignments. Thanks to these leisurely walks and arboretums under the stars, Combined with the presence of Starfleet Admiralty, Starbase 1 also made an ideal diplomatic meeting point. While Starbase 1 has a large crew complement across its 40 decks dedicated to habitation, the strong point could function with as little as only 300 personnel. The 12 docking arms were the primary points for ships to dock at, but the entire ring featured a retractable shutter that opened up internal bays for cargo transfer or to receive smaller ships. They often housed supplies and reserves for starships to resupply and rearm at, and some dedicated stations have their own internal assembly systems for the manufacture of equipment for supply. It's not clear if Starbase 1 was armed outside of wartime, but the strongpoint stations had numerous phaser bank and torpedo hardpoints. Starbase 1 has been in several locations in its time, but never left the Solar System. Its very first position was, of course, over Earth, but eventually it was moved further out, as other orbital structures like the San Francisco shipyards were created. By the mid-23rd century, plans were underway to create a dedicated space dock over Earth that would come to replace the ancient station's duties, and it was shifted even further away from Earth's orbit. During the course of the Klingon War, the attached pods were removed for safety, and Starbase 1 was relocated to the outer edges of the Solar System, double Pluto's orbit at 100 AU from Earth, over a planetoid there. This small planetoid was unnamed, but looked to be a terraformed dwarf planet, and yes, I'd love to see more on these and know more of them in the Trek universe. It was serving effectively as an outer warning post and security point for Starfleet ships that did not have to enter the core systems. However, House de Gore successfully attacked the station in 2257, destroying its 3 defensive ships and causing numerous breaches. They painted their house's symbol upon it before retreating, leaving a token group of 274 warriors behind to defend their claim. This raid symbolised the closest assault yet on Earth, but ultimately the last Federation outpost to fall in the war. Over the following year, Starbase 1 was recalled back into the system proper and repaired. By 2259, it had been restored to operation and reunited with its biome pods. Now the station was brought to the orbit of Jupiter, with its original location over Earth, now home to the ESD, which was nearing completion. By 2399, there was still a Starbase 1. However, it is unlikely to be the same installation considering its age, but it still resides either within the confines of the Solar System or just nearby to it. Before its appearance on screen, many different interpretations of what exactly Starbase 1 was existed. Some placed it as a planet-side starbase, akin to those seen frequently in TNG. Others defined it as the alternate name of the Earth space dock, and its exact location has ping-ponged all over the sector. However, most do place it within proximity of the core worlds, which makes sense. It could also be that over time the name was reused as new bases were commissioned. I do enjoy that we do get a little bit more lore than just it was Starfleet's first big base in space. Tying on the seed pods as an old Earth experiment that got dropped for a while gives it that little bit of extra history and does make it seem genuinely older. Of course, after centuries, a more dedicated installation is going to be made to basically undertake all the roles Starbase 1 would have had in the form of the ESD. But until it was ready, Starbase 1 made for a good stand-in for Starfleet's space-side platform of operations in Sol. The Strongpoint stations were a hub for long-term inhabitation, a test of Starfleet's capabilities and a logistical hardpoint for the expansion of the Federation. They were among the earliest space stations made, and a vital stepping stone for the fleet. When there was only Starbase 1, the other space frames were basically only the construction yard drydock facilities and accompanying office stations or smaller stations dotted around. The strong point was the first true test of construction and functionality. Thanks for watching this breakdown on the Starbase 1 and I guess the Strong Point class station in general. I've been Rick, and until the next one, goodbye.